You ever wake up one morning and just know something's off? That was me last Thursday. My name's Quentin Riles, and I live in a pretty quiet cul-de-sac just outside of Austin. Quiet, that is, unless you count the screeching banshee that is Nadine Penley, HOA president, professional busybody, and neighborhood tyrant. I was sipping my coffee on the back patio when I heard the pool pump sputter. That was strange. It's on a timer and it shouldn't have been running. So I went over to check the outlet, and that's when I noticed my outdoor plug had a second cord jammed into it. A long, orange extension cord snaking its way over the fence into the Penleys' yard. I followed it with my eyes, blinking like an idiot. There was no mistaking it. Nadine had plugged into my power. At first, I thought maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe they were doing yard work and forgot to ask. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I unplugged it and went about my day. The next morning, same thing. Pool pump kicking on at the wrong time, water churning like it was trying to drain itself. I walked out and sure enough, there was that orange cord again. I yanked it out and walked next door. Nadine was out front, clipping her roses in that overly performed way, like she was starring in her own gardening show. "Morning, Nadine," I said, trying to stay civil. "Any reason your extension cord is plugged into my outlet?" She didn't even look up. "Oh, the landscapers needed power." It was just for a few minutes. 2 days in a row, she paused, then looked up with that fake smile she always uses when she's about to lie. "Quentin, as an HOA board member, I have the right to ensure neighborhood maintenance is upheld." "You did sign the covenant. The covenant doesn't say you can steal electricity." She waved her hand like I was being ridiculous. "It's just a tiny bit of power. You won't even notice it on your bill." I took a slow breath. That outlet is wired into my pool pump. When you plug something in, it triggers a secondary drain cycle. You're draining my water every single time. Her eyes twitched, but she kept smiling. "Sounds like a poor setup on your part." I stared at her, stunned. "So you're admitting you knew?" "I'm admitting nothing," she said, turning back to her roses. "But I am reminding you that your lawn is looking a little long. HOA guidelines are very clear about grass height." That's when I knew this wasn't just about power. This was personal. I went back to my place, pulled up the security footage from the last few days, and sure enough, there she was, every morning at 6:30, plugging her cord into my outlet like it was her God-given right. I wasn't gonna explode. That's what she wanted. No, I had a better idea. I called a buddy of mine from college. Rusty works in residential electrical installations. He owed me a favor. I asked him if we could rig something up that wouldn't hurt anyone but would make a point. He paused and said, "You want to teach a lesson." I got just the thing. By Sunday morning, my outlet looked the same, but it wasn't. By Sunday morning, the outlet looked untouched. Same cover, same location, same everything. But anyone who tried to use it without knowing what Rusty had installed would get a very different result. I set up a motion-activated camera right above the outlet, tucked behind the trellis. Then I waited. Monday rolled around. At exactly 6:35, just as the sun was beginning to break the horizon, there she was wearing those oversized sunglasses and her faded pink visor. She didn't hesitate. Walked right up to the fence, reached over with that same orange cord and plugged it in. A loud pop echoed across the yard. Not dangerous, Rusty had made sure of that, but loud enough to startle. Then came the sprinkler system. Not mine, hers. Rusty had rerouted the outlet's circuit to backfeed into the Penleys' own irrigation timer. The moment she completed the circuit, every sprinkler head on her property burst to life, blasting her from all sides like a coordinated ambush. She screamed, flailing backward into the hydrangeas, soaked in seconds. I watched from my upstairs window, coffee in hand, trying to keep a straight face. She yanked the cord out, tossed it like it was radioactive, and stormed back to her house, water sloshing out of her shoes with every step. That afternoon, a notice appeared on my door. Not mailed, hand-delivered and taped to the glass like a ransom letter. HOA letterhead, thick red ink, formal complaint, tampering with community landscaping resources. No explanation, no details, just a demand to appear at the next HOA board meeting. I wasn't remotely surprised. If anything, I was impressed by how fast she moved when embarrassed. But she'd made a mistake this time. She forgot who she was dealing with. I had been a municipal code enforcement officer for 14 years before retiring. I helped draft zoning language and property ordinances. I knew exactly how to read between the lines of HOA documents, and more importantly, I knew which ones didn't hold up in court. I printed a copy of the HOA's charter and went line by line. No clause permitted board members to access private utilities for any reason. No clause allowed enforcement actions based on non-existent violations. And absolutely nothing gave Nadine or anyone else the right to use my property as their personal power source. That's when I found something interesting. Tucked into an older amendment, dated nearly 12 years prior, was a clause about shared utility easements. It allowed temporary access to shared water lines during emergency repairs, but nothing about electricity. But here's the thing: Nadine had initialed that amendment. She had been on the board then, too. She knew exactly what it did and didn't allow. I made copies of everything: charter, amendment, security camera footage, electrical receipts, sprinkler footage. Even the audio from the camera where you could clearly hear her say, "This is just for a few minutes." That one was gold. At the board meeting Thursday evening, I arrived early. The room was in the community center, a beige box of a building next to the tennis courts. Folding chairs, a long plastic table, and a crowd of maybe 30 residents. Most of them had no idea what was coming. Nadine sat at the center of the table, flanked by two other board members, both of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She gave her usual greeting, thanked everyone for attending, and then, without missing a beat, called me up. "Mr. Riles, you've been cited for intentionally sabotaging HOA landscaping operations," she began, her voice all faux authority and clipped syllables. "We're giving you the opportunity to explain your actions before a formal fine is issued." I walked to the front, pulled out a small portable projector, and set it on the table. "Before I respond," I said, "I'd like to share a short video." The lights dimmed. The camera feed played. Her approaching my fence, plugging the cord in, the sprinklers, the scream, the fall into the bushes. The crowd erupted, stifled laughter, a few gasps, and someone whispered, "Oh my God," under their breath. I let it play again, this time with the audio, just for a few minutes, clear as day. I paused the footage. This isn't just about a stolen drop of electricity. Over the course of 5 days, Mrs. Penley diverted power from my line power that triggered my pool's secondary drain cycle and cost me over 900 gallons of water. Gasps again. I passed around a copy of the water usage report, along with a notarized statement from Rusty, detailing how the electrical load had tripped the system. "But it gets better," I continued. "Because here's the clause in the HOA charter that specifically prohibits board members from accessing private utilities." I brought it up on the projector, highlighted and annotated. "And here's the amendment from 12 years ago, right here initialed by Mrs. Penley." Proof she knew this was against the rules. Nadine's jaw twitched. She tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. "I'm not finished." After being caught on camera, she filed a retaliatory complaint against me, fabricated with no basis in the charter. That's not just unethical. It's abuse of authority. A man in the back stood up. "Is this true, Nadine?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The room had shifted. The board members on either side of her suddenly found their hands very interesting. I turned to them. "I'm filing a formal motion to censure Mrs. Penley for misuse of authority, violation of the charter, and unlawful tampering with private property." The younger board member, Darla, I think her name was, nodded slowly. "We'll open a vote immediately," but I wasn't done yet. The theft of utilities and tampering with electrical systems crosses a legal line. I've already reported the incident to the local precinct. Detective Calloway has opened an investigation. That part was true. I'd met with her Wednesday morning, showed her the footage, and filed an official report. She'd taken it seriously, especially given the water loss and the risk of electrical fire. Nadine finally found her voice. "I was trying to maintain standards. You think this is about power. You've let your hedges grow out of alignment for months. You never participate in cleanup days. You think you're above the rules." I turned slowly. "You broke the law, Nadine. You trespassed, you stole, and you lied. This isn't about hedges. It's about you thinking the HOA is your personal fiefdom." The room was dead silent. The vote passed 3-0. Nadine was officially censured and suspended from board duties pending the outcome of the investigation. As I walked out, several neighbors approached me, shaking my hand, thanking me. One older gentleman clapped me on the shoulder and said, "About damn time someone stood up to her." I didn't smile, I just nodded. This wasn't about revenge, it was about drawing a line. Outside, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. I looked at Nadine's house. The orange extension cord still lay coiled in a sad heap near her porch. She hadn't picked it up. Maybe she knew she wouldn't need it anymore. The next morning, I woke up to find a county vehicle parked across from my house. A woman in a navy blazer was standing on the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, speaking with one of the neighbors. As I stepped outside, she turned and approached me with a polite nod. "Mr. Riles." "I'm Marissa Dugan with Travis County Code Enforcement. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" I gestured to the porch table. "Sure, let me guess someone's been busy filing complaints." She sat and flipped through several documents clipped inside a weather-worn binder. "Actually, no. We received a call from Detective Calloway. She flagged this neighborhood for a potential broader investigation. I'm here to verify whether this is an isolated incident or part of a pattern." I raised an eyebrow. "Broader?" Marissa set down the binder and leaned forward. "We've had reports from 3 other residents in the last 6 months who claim their outdoor outlets were tampered with or used without permission. Until now, nothing stuck. No one had proof, but your footage changed that." I stared at her. "Are you saying Nadine's been doing this to other people too?" She nodded. "Or authorizing others to, possibly under the guise of community maintenance. But that isn't the biggest issue. One of those homes had solar panel battery backups. When someone plugged in without understanding the system, it shorted a junction box and nearly caused a fire." I blinked. "Why hasn't this come out before now?" "No proof, just suspicion. But with what you provided and the amendment initialed by Mrs. Penley, we can start connecting dots. We're coordinating with the district attorney's office. There may be grounds for felony misappropriation of utility services and reckless endangerment." A slow chill crept down my spine. I thought this was just typical HOA overreach, but this was bigger, much bigger. By the afternoon, word had spread. A small crowd gathered at the park across from the community center. Not the usual friendly faces nodding hello on evening walks. These people were talking in hushed tones, glancing toward the Penley house like it had turned radioactive. I spotted Carl and Denise from 3 houses down, both looking grim. Carl crossed his arms. "You hear about the fire hazard on Larkspur Lane?" I nodded. "Marissa told me." Denise wrung her hands. "We never thought she'd go that far. I mean, we knew she liked control, but..." Carl cut in. "We checked our exterior cameras this morning, found footage from back in April. Some guy in a maintenance vest, no ID, no logo, plugged into our patio outlet, stayed for about 20 minutes, then vanished. We thought he was a contractor." I frowned. "Did you report it?" "We are now." I already emailed Marissa. It didn't take long for the story to gain traction outside the neighborhood. Local Channel 7 showed up the next day. They parked a van near the entrance and interviewed a few residents under the shade of the oak trees. I stayed back. Let the evidence speak for itself. But Nadine didn't. By Thursday morning, she was marching door to door with typed letters in hand, trying to explain herself. I watched from my window as she struggled to keep her voice even, insisting the whole thing was a misunderstanding and that certain individuals were attempting to discredit her. She didn't dare come to my door. It didn't matter. The damage was done. That evening, I got a call from Detective Calloway. "We've officially opened a criminal investigation," she said. "Not just for the electrical theft, but for coercion and fraudulent use of HOA authority. We've subpoenaed the HOA's financial records." I leaned back in my chair. "What are you expecting to find?" "Misuse of funds, for starters. We've already seen irregular payments labeled neighborhood maintenance that don't correspond to any actual work orders. Thousands of dollars over the last 3 years." I exhaled slowly. "And the board just let that slide. Some of them may not have known, others might have been complicit. We'll find out." That night, I pulled out the original HOA charter again. Something had been nagging at me. Buried in the appendix, was a clause about emergency elections protocol for replacing board members in cases of misconduct. It required a petition signed by at least 1/3 of homeowners, followed by a special vote within 30 days. I scanned the signatures I'd collected over the last week. Between the sprinkler footage, the Channel 7 piece, and the county's involvement, people were ready for change. By noon the next day, I had enough. I dropped the petition off at Darla's house. She was the youngest member of the board and the only one who hadn't looked guilty the night of the meeting. She answered the door in a loose ponytail and oversized sweater, looking exhausted. "You're serious about this?" she asked, scanning the names. "Dead serious. This place needs a reset," she nodded. "I'll call the vote. You've got the numbers." The special election was set for the following Saturday. In the days leading up to it, the community transformed. Neighbors who'd barely spoken before started organizing. People volunteered to help draft new bylaws. One couple even offered to host an open forum in their garage, complete with folding chairs and lemonade. I stayed mostly behind the scenes. I didn't want to be on the board. I just wanted balance. But fate had other plans. 2 days before the election, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a typed letter, unsigned, and a stack of photocopied receipts. The letter was brief. "If you're serious about cleaning up the HOA, you'll want to see this. These are the vendors Nadine used. None of them are licensed. Some don't exist at all." I sorted through the pages. Payments made to companies with names like Elite Grounds and Pristine Property Services. No tax ID numbers, no permits. Just vague descriptions and invoices signed with illegible initials. I forwarded everything to Detective Calloway. The day of the election, the community center was packed. Folding tables had been set up for ballots, and volunteers checked names against a printed roster of homeowners. Tension hung in the air, but it wasn't angry, it was focused. When the votes were counted, Nadine was officially removed from the board, along with 2 of her closest allies. 3 new members were elected, including Darla, who had stepped up to lead the transition. After the announcement, she took the mic. "We're not just replacing people," she said. "We're rewriting how this HOA works. No more arbitrary fines, no more unchecked authority. We're forming a transparency committee and we'll publish all financials monthly." Applause broke out. Not thunderous, but genuine. As the crowd dispersed, Carl walked up to me, holding a soda can and grinning for the first time in weeks. "Feels like we just took our neighborhood back," I nodded. "Let's make sure we keep it." In the following weeks, the investigation continued. Nadine retained a lawyer, but the evidence piled up faster than she could spin it. Fraudulent invoices, unauthorized utility use, and financial mismanagement. It turned out she'd been funneling HOA dues into a shell company registered under her cousin's name. The DA filed formal charges. She pled not guilty, but no one in the neighborhood was buying it. I never saw the orange extension cord again. The week after the special election was the first time in months the neighborhood felt normal again. Kids rode their bikes late into the evening, couples walked their dogs without glancing over their shoulders, and no one came home to pink notices taped to their front doors. The Penley house, once the nerve center of every HOA stunt, sat shuttered and quiet, curtains drawn, lawn untrimmed. Porch light off. On Wednesday morning, I got a call from Marissa Dugan, the county code officer who'd first stepped onto my porch. Her voice wasn't rushed, but it had a new edge to it. "Quentin, I need to meet with you in person." Bringing someone from the DA's office. I met them both at the new interim HOA office, a spare room in the community center, cleared out and repurposed by the new board. Marissa arrived with a man in a gray blazer who introduced himself as Assistant District Attorney Todd Lindell. He spoke first. "We've confirmed that your footage and documentation led directly to the criminal referral," he said, placing a folder on the table. "But what we've found since then is considerably more serious than utility theft." He opened the folder and slid a few black and white scans toward me. "Bank statements, not HOA accounts, personal ones, all tied to Nadine." Lindell tapped a line with a capped pen. "This account received over $47,000 in unreported transfers from a vendor listed on HOA books, Civic Green Maintenance. Ever see them mowing a lawn? I shook my head. You wouldn't, it doesn't exist. The LLC was registered to a P.O. box in Round Rock, no employees, no equipment, no tax filings, but the HOA paid them monthly for 3 years. And every payment ended up in that account. Marissa added, we also found altered invoices for landscaping materials, mulch, gravel, fertilizer charged above premium rates, but deliveries never occurred. The vendor ID numbers were made up. Lindell leaned forward. She wasn't just stealing electricity, she was embezzling, and the reason this affects you directly is because your home was listed in one of the fabricated service logs as having received a front yard irrigation upgrade, cost billed $3,000. I blinked. I've never had anything done to the irrigation lines. Exactly, Lindell said. She listed over a dozen properties with fake upgrades to justify the payments. Your name's on 3 of them. I exhaled slowly. So what happens now? We've secured an indictment. Wire fraud, falsifying business records, and misuse of HOA funds. She was picked up this morning. That took a second to register. Wait, she's in custody, Lindell nodded. Booked and processed, bail denied. Judge considered her a flight risk given the financial manipulation and false documentation. Marissa added, we're working with the new board to audit every payment from the last 5 years. If you're willing, we'd like you to serve as a community liaison, someone who understands the charter and can help homeowners identify irregularities. I agreed, not for recognition, but because I didn't want anyone else blindsided the way I had been. Word got out fast. By that evening, a notice went up at the community bulletin board announcing the charges in plain language: fraud, theft, criminal conspiracy. The new board didn't hide behind legalese. They printed out a summary of findings, listed every fake vendor, and highlighted which homes had been used as justification for the embezzled funds. Neighbors stood around the board in stunned silence, reading line by line. The mood wasn't angry, it was heavier than that. Betrayal doesn't cause fury right away. It settles in slow, like damp air before a storm. Carl spotted me across the park and walked over, arms crossed but not tense. Did you know she used our house too? He asked. I nodded. I saw the list. She said we'd been selected for a water reclamation upgrade last year, even gave me a brochure. I thought we were just lucky. She was counting on that, I said. If people think they're benefiting, they don't dig too deep. Denise approached from behind, holding a manila folder. We found this in our old HOA welcome packet, she said, handing it to me. Inside was a typed document titled Volunteer Access Waiver, signed and dated. She said it was to allow the HOA to do landscaping inspections without scheduling. I flipped through. The language was vague, intentionally so. It didn't authorize anything explicitly, but it could be twisted to look like consent. She used this as legal cover, I said. To justify the extension cords and the unauthorized access. Carl looked toward the Penley house. She planned all of it, didn't she? Every part, I said. But the moment she plugged into my outlet, that's when it unraveled. Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood rebuilt itself. The new board held open meetings every Saturday morning for residents to voice concerns. They reversed nearly every fine issued under Nadine's term, refunded overages, and implemented a rule requiring at least 2 board members to approve any expenditure over $500. One unexpected side effect was the community's sudden interest in home surveillance. At least a dozen residents installed security cameras or upgraded their systems, not out of paranoia, but out of a shared understanding. Trust was earned now, not assumed. I kept my system running, but I turned off the motion alerts. No more cords snaking over fences. No more early morning trespassers. The DA's office filed a motion to freeze Nadine's assets within a week of the indictment. Her accounts were locked. Her house, tied up in a mortgage fraud investigation, was seized as part of a forfeiture claim. She wouldn't be coming back. One afternoon, Darla stopped by with a clipboard and a coffee. We're rewriting the charter, she said. Not just patching it starting from scratch, clear language. Checks and balances, no more vague clauses someone can exploit. I took the clipboard and scanned the draft. It was good, transparent, fair, And most importantly, enforceable by more than just intimidation. How many people have signed on? I asked. Almost everyone. We've got enough to pass it by vote. I signed. She lingered for a moment, then asked, do you ever think she actually believed she was helping the neighborhood, that all her control was just misguided discipline? I looked at the burned-out porch light across the street, the withered hydrangeas, the empty driveway. No, I said. She wasn't trying to help anyone but herself. We just stopped her before she could do worse. By the time summer arrived, the last traces of her tenure were gone. The new landscaping company, a real one this time, with uniforms and ID badges, replaced the crumbling sign at the neighborhood entrance. It read, Cedar Hollow, a community built together. It was cleaner, simpler, and it meant something now. I never heard from Nadine again. The case went to trial, and though I wasn't required to testify, my footage was shown to the jury. She was convicted on all counts. Sentenced to 7 years with no parole for the first 3. Her lawyer tried to argue for leniency, claiming stress and volunteer fatigue. The judge didn't buy it. The neighborhood moved on. So did I. Sometimes on quiet evenings, I'd walk the perimeter of my yard and glance at the outlet where it all started. Rusty's rewiring was still intact, but I'd sealed the cover with a locking box not out of fear, but as a reminder. Power, no matter how small, should never be taken for granted or taken without asking, especially not from someone who knows how to fight back.